You may or may not recall, after Pierre Poilievre squandered what ought to have been a relative surefire thing of an election, a man who you may or may not know, Mario Zelaya, on Twitter, who is a self-proclaimed liberal fact-checker and conservative Canadian. And you may or may not know him. It's Mario for the North, the number 4, at Mario for the North on X. He had been a influential voice during the campaign. I was right, Mario. He's in the backdrop. He can see it now. Mario's an influential voice during the campaign, and he went on something of a meltdown after Pierre Poilievre officially lost the election and his own seat. We're going to talk about some of the conservative stuff coming out of Canada. Mario, despite his meltdown, I'm fairly certain is a decent human being, and I figured we'd air out our differences viva voce. Mario, sir, first of all, thank you for coming on the channel. I said the backdrop where you are looks absolutely beautiful. For those who don't know who you are, although I suspect many have seen your videos, who are you?
I am honestly, I'm an entrepreneur first. And I recently, I would say about a year and a half ago, started posting on TikTok, and my account, I think, really blew up on there. And I started garnering a lot of views. I started focusing a lot of on Trump, or sorry, I started focusing a lot on Trudeau and the Liberal policies. And I only recently opened up my X account. I think it was maybe in December, maybe November. And so I'm new to X, and I'm new to Instagram, just because I've been so busy. So I've been trying to basically promote a lot of just awareness of what's happening in Canada under the Liberal rule for the last probably year and a half. It was primarily TikTok before, and then I started seeing a lot of kind of momentum across all platforms, and I think people are hungry for I think alternative news as opposed to mainstream news. And so my goal is, and I don't know if you know this or not, but I purposely turned down sponsorship. I actually make $0 on what I do. I have, since January, probably have close to 300 million views across all platforms. I don't care to monetize it. I care for change, and that's always been my goal.
Now, so if I may ask, entrepreneur in what domains?
Honestly, I touch a lot of different industries. Like the first company I had was marketing and tech. That got acquired by a private equity firm about a decade ago. Around that same period of time, I started an axe throwing business, that's the one that really started blowing up. I At the peak before COVID, we had close to 40 locations. Right now, we're about 20, I think 23 or 24 locations. Had locations in a lot of them in the US, in Canada, had a couple in the UK. If people have ever heard of, bad axe throwing, I'm the guy that started it. If anyone on the stream or anyone has ever seen axe throwing on TV, whether it's on ESPN or TSN, that's another company that I own. It's called WATL, or the World Axe Throwing League. So it's been kind of instrumental to, if you've ever heard of axe throwing, the business that I own with the great employees that I have allowed it to become basically a household name because 8 years ago.
I actually do watch axe throwing. I didn't know that you own it. And the I don't know if it's the Canadian competition. I mean, if it's the national competition, I've watched. I love it. It's like darts, except with bigger darts that can do more damage. And the accuracy is amazing because they got to go for different size circles and they carry different points. And if you go, and it just has to touch the circle when you throw it, but it's amazing.
Right.
Are you from one of your tweets? Are you originally from El Salvador?
I am. I was born in El Salvador. We left there, or I should say, my family and I left there. I was only 5 years old. I obviously see myself as a Canadian. I've been here for almost 40 years. My first home in the country was a shelter home. I still picture it when you picture those movies where you have those shelters after a hurricane where it's just open beds in the open, and that's what it was like in Toronto. We struggled. We struggled our way through, and my family, I should say, my brothers and I got ourselves educated, and kind of went down this path of just pushing forward. We've seen the extreme ends of extreme poverty, having nothing coming into Canada. I think my parents had, I would say maybe $500 to their name. You know, three young kids, didn't know how to speak English. English is my second language. You know, even as a kid, like, you know, when you go to the playground, we would just point to what we wanted to do. And so that's generally my background. So born in El Salvador, but raised here.
Are you 45 years old?
What am I, 44? Am I
Okay.
turning 44 this year? Yeah, I'm turning 44 this year.
Okay, now when do you get into? I'm going to rib you a little bit because between both,
Sure.
I don't know all of your election commentary. I just know mine, and I know where I was right and where I was not right. When did you get into politics, and how long have you been conservative for?
Honestly, that's a great question. I've actually been a liberal my whole life. I was a liberal my whole life, I would say, and I think I fall under this a bucket where I think most immigrants do, where you go into a country, of course you vote liberal, right? They're the ones that let us in, and you know, they're the ones that you know, kind of had these policies, and they're, you know, progressive. And honestly, like, for the longest time, I knew nothing about politics, like, whatsoever. I would say even 6 years ago, I just thought, you know, politics is for old boring men, and it had nothing to do with us. And it wasn't really until COVID. COVID is when I started seeing, like, um, I started seeing a big shift in how much I cared about it. And I remember CNN actually had reached out to me, and they wanted me to come on air to talk to John King. And, you know, the first question John King asked me was basically a setup question against Donald Trump. You know, what do you think about Donald Trump saying this, that, you know, we should open things up, but the governor is saying this? And my whole approach was, I really don't care. Like, I don't care what Donald Trump said. I don't care what anyone said. I care about my business. Like, I'm trying to, I got, like, my employees have kids to feed. They have a family. They have, you know, jobs. Like, you're shutting down our country, our economy. I care about this thing getting us getting it open and getting it restarted. Like, let's look at the facts here. And that's when I really started realizing that, you know, this the whole thing with COVID was just, it was a lot of it was political. And you know, even the shutdowns that we had in Ontario, most people don't realize that Ontario was probably the most shut down state in the world, not just in North America, in the world. It was literally a year before we could open back up. And the Liberal politicians, they knew that. They knew we were getting absolutely dirt from the government. They gave us loans. And I'll give you a quick example. In Canada, they gave us loans of $40,000. They said, we'll give you $60,000 loan, but if you pay the whole thing, we'll let you keep 20 of it. This is for my whole operations in Canada. I have, you know, 8, 9 locations. I have rent. I have utilities. I have upkeep. I have insurance to pay for. Like, there's so much infrastructure. 40 grand does nothing. That's maybe 2 weeks worth of expenses at best. In the US, they said, you know what, Mario? Apply for a PPP loan. We're going to give you close to $1 million. Like, we really, you know, we shut you down. You're making no money. You have all this infrastructure. Send us your details. That's the difference between America and Canada. And Canada kept us closed for almost twice as long as they did it in the U.S. The whole thing was just a disgrace, and we started seeing this similarities happen within democratic states. Anything, you know, New York, oh, we're shut down. It's just like Ontario. You get down to Texas, oh, we're open right away. You get to Florida, we're open. Georgia, yeah, we're starting to open up a bit more. And so that's when I really started getting into it. I didn't really start speaking about it until probably about a year and a half ago, when I had enough.
Do I understand? Not to compete, did you vote Liberal in 2019?
I didn't vote in 2019.
Okay. I get flack because I voted Liberal in 2015 when I was in Westmount NDG. It literally makes no difference, but like you say, it wasn't out of any sort of. It was just Liberal. You vote Liberal, especially, you know, historically, culturally, family, and you don't learn, and you realize that was I won't say the first. That was definitely the last time I voted Liberal. I don't remember how I voted in other elections. I was going to ask you something. I'm originally from Quebec, also, by the way, and I think we had it worse than Ontario. Like, we were
Yes,
not
you
just
did.
locked down; we had curfew for 5.5 months. And if you were eligible, they'd give you $2,000 a month as a stipend for the torture. So you turn conservative. I say everyone becomes conservative after they realize just how abusive the Liberals are when you don't fall in line, or even when you do. When do you become? Well, when do you get involved specifically in the Pierre Poilievre campaign?
I would say it's kind of a funny thing because I've never spoken to them. I've never, worked with them in any way, shape, or form. I would say my whole goal was this is the news today. Someone got shot and killed and they're out in bail. Why were they out in bail in the first place if they had another, attempted murder charge? And so I would talk about, Bill C-75. Why did Trudeau turn down a $1 trillion deal with Japan and tell them that there's no business case for it, and then Donald Trump just signed it with Japan? Like that's $1 trillion out of all of our pockets. And so I would say I really started getting hot and heavy over it. And frankly, I never came out and said I'm a conservative. Like you need to vote conservative. I was literally only telling people like this is what mainstream media is saying, but this is also what they're not saying. And I'm going to connect the dots for you all. And this is the information that I think you guys need to have because this is exactly why this is happening. Why do we have, nearly, what was it, 1.2 million immigrants that came in, I think it was in 2022 or 2023. What is it with our obsession with Pakistan and India? It's not, and all of a sudden it's racist to say that. And it's like, you can't tell me what's racist when I'm a minority. I came to this country as an immigrant and I came here as a refugee. Like facts are not racist. You can interpret it you can interpret it however way you want, but these are facts. Like the majority of the immigration
Well,
came from there.
India, Pakistan, China, but India in the number one spot by like four times the number two spot, which I think was China, if not Pakistan. I'm going to double check. But like 110,000 in 2023 registered. It makes no sense. And you try to make it make sense, and the only way it makes sense is that it's fulfilling the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, which is a racist conspiracy theory until you realize it's happening, but you need the unskilled labor until you don't need the unskilled labor. Now you got Mark Carney talking about getting immigration under normal control and making sure that you're taking in quality immigrants. It's the ultimate of gaslighting, but but the problem is this, Mario, and this is where we're going to get into Pierre's campaign. It's not just that I turned out to be right. My criticism I took a lot of flack for at the time, and I still take flack for it. And it wasn't criticism intended to tear down. It was in criticism intended to build up. People say, Viva, you've been Americanized. That type of politics won't work in Canada. Well, tough shit. This is how it turned out. What is your, not just a post-mortem assessment in the time of how Pierre ran his campaign?
Well, I mean, let's talk specifically on immigration, then we'll talk on some of the other things. The tough part is 10% of our population is temporary workers, and these are people who eventually I think will end up becoming citizens of Canada. I think our naturalization rate is 50%, and for those viewers who don't know what that is, that means how many people in the country are going to convert to become Canadian citizens. It's about half.
Over what period of time? Is it over a decade? I think.
I can't remember. I know it used to be 75%, but because how bad things are and how expensive are, that rate has dropped substantially to about 48%. And I honestly don't know through what
the
length
time
of
frame
period of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
10% are temporary workers in Canada.
Yes. So we have 4.1 million people who are temporary workers, 50,000 people who did not show up to the first day of school. They came here under fraudulent pretenses, saying, I'm a student. I'm an international student." They didn't come here to be international students. They came here to take our jobs. They got in here and they used the student as a path to get in here. And that there's so much corruption and scams that are going on within the country. There's so much birth tourism. Like I'm literally hearing from nurses working in hospitals in Quebec and British Columbia and Ontario that talk about what business does a 8.5 month pregnant woman have coming to Canada to visit. No one in their right mind is going to do that, right? You're coming here for citizenship.
Do you know what country they tend to be coming from? By the way, it was the Philippines, which was number two, not Pakistan. But it's all close after the third. Are they from China? The 8.5 month pregnant women, or is it other countries?
All the stories I've been hearing about were East India. Sorry, they're East Asia, which are India, and Pakistan, and this is and there's also a much bigger one that needs to be tackled is people bring in their parents from say India, and this is the story that I've heard is the big scam that's going on, and it got verified by a couple of nurses as well because they couldn't figure it out. They will say, my dad is 65 years old. You can't get you can't get your retirement, or you can't get any sort of old age security in Canada unless you've been here for 10 years. So what they do is they come in, they falsify their paperwork, because to get this stuff in a third world country, I can get fake documents for a few $100. So I can say I'm 65 years old. I get here, I'm really 55. Maybe I still work through my retirement. So they're still collecting income, but then they're able to retire and collect their old age security. And all of a sudden, and I'm calling it right now, we are going to have a record number of people over the age of 95 in the coming decade.
But now, so you are illustrating. You're talking about a problem that I was talking about, but in less. I talk more about American stuff, but it was a known problem in Canada. It's been a known problem. It's been part and parcel of the people on terror watch lists getting nabbed crossing the border from Canada into the U.S. You want to tell me why? I mean, I don't know what your position was on how Pierre ran his campaign. I suspect you think I shouldn't even presume what you think. Why the hell was he not? He didn't talk about it at all. And people are going to say, well, he talked about it a year ago. Too bad. Nothing came out in the last 30, well, the only 32 days of the election. What the hell?
Honestly, I think, and this is going to tie into maybe something that we're going to cover later, is I really don't know if there's much more we could have done to battle Trump. And I think the big thing, the big uphill battle that we really had, and don't get me wrong, I think there probably could be some improvements that Pierre Poilievre and his team could do. But I really do think it was such an uphill battle that there's this such massive Donald Trump derangement syndrome that that's what people cared about. Like, look at Australia. Australia, I think, won by a majority. Like, I think it was a landslide, but how they elected. And I honestly think Canadians believe, oh wow, some of these policies sound a lot like Trump. Oh shoot, we're going to have another Donald Trump in our hands. We can't do this. Donald Trump is the bad man. Let's just vote against the guy who's not Donald Trump. People don't realize that a conservative Canadian does not mean a Republican American. And there is a difference between the two. And I think there's also a difference in leadership styles. And I'm not here to criticize Donald Trump or anything of that sort. He's doing what he needs to do, what he feels is best for his country. But I truly do believe that as soon as people hear Pierre Poilievre said, you know what, we have to cut down our federal workforce. We have 73% growth. We have over 100,000 public employees that were hired. We nearly doubled it under Trudeau in the last 10 years. And all Pierre Poilievre said is we have to cut it down. All of a sudden, he's anti-worker. He's going to implement a Doge. He's going to be like Donald Trump.
But I brought up that comment, which I'll stop doing because I see they catch your eye. But that's because he's a cuck, someone said, referring to Pierre, not to you. That he is a cuck, and you are going to get that blowback. And like I was saying from the first time it happened, when you let the blowback dictate your strategy, you got the blowback coming from the media that manufactures the narrative, the same media that Pierre said he would cut the funding to. And then he caters to it and then says, okay, they'll dictate my campaign strategy. How on earth does anyone think that's going to work out well? Like, so what? And being a leader means, yeah, you're going to come after me. It's a big problem, and you can hammer home the facts. You said 10% temporary worker. Is it 25% of the population directly or indirectly employed by the federal government?
I think you're probably right. I think the number is so astronomical. I think the number that you're maybe quoting might include federal, provincial, and municipal.
Yeah.
Which no matter what, it's unsustainable. Like, it's literally unsustainable.
So, I mean, I don't understand. I understand the excuse, and it's not even an explanation. It's an excuse. Well, the media is going to come out hard. Well, first of all, had he won, maybe I'd be eating crow, but I would still probably, like a good lawyer, find a way to weasel out of it. I'm joking. Had he won, I would say, okay, fine. I was wrong. He lost. He did not talk about the things that made him popular in the first place, and it's borderline unforgivable. My only question is, did he not want to win? Like, not either an Oprah Winfrey, like, fear of success type psychology, or other people suggesting he's happier to be a feckless opposition leader, go groveling for a seat in Crowfoot. And I'm not demeaning. It's just where in Manitoba, because he needs to go get the seat from Kuchek, or the guy who. But like, it's inexplicable. I don't think there is a good explanation for him bowing to that pressure that you've just described.
Well, I see, and I don't know if he necessarily bowed to the pressure. And honestly, what you bring up a good point. Like, I wonder what impact, if any at all, it would have if he literally said something along the lines like, "Donald Trump, go F yourself. Like, I'm gonna come after you hard. when people elect me, you're going to regret the day that you ever made those threats. I don't know, like, right? Like maybe he could have come out more aggressive. I honestly have no idea if that truly would have had much of an impact. And, there's a few quick things that I want to, basically touch on. And I'm not sure if you're seeing a lot of the mainstream media and your algorithms in your feeds of what we get in Canada. It is pure 100% what I believe is propaganda. Like it was fully just weaponized. Everything, I honestly believe the Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, CBC, CTV, all these outlets were just 100% out to get them. And the voters that come out, the voters that are over 55, 60 years old, even my parents, like they voted liberal. They're glued to the TV. Like, and that's the part that is to me like absolutely insane is those numbers came out in record numbers. They're scared. They operate off of rumors. I've heard from police officers who I'm friends with who will say, Mario, you should have seen the shit that I was hearing in the line of people saying like why they came out. It's people like that look like they haven't gotten I think he described it as people who haven't like left their cave in a decade and they came out just to vote for Mark Carney. And they're saying like he's going to privatize healthcare. I made a video saying I will give anyone $5,000 to the first person that sends me a video where Pierre Poilievre said he's going to privatize healthcare. And these are the things that they care about. It's the absolute most astronomical, ridiculous stuff I've ever heard.
Well, but now you're making another point that I was making. First of all, I don't know if my feed looks like yours. I get a lot of CTV news and I always comment on it. If you put in the Viva Fry CTV news, you'll see me, I give them hell that they deserve. But you're confirming the other criticism, which I had, which was that he was allowing MSM propagandists to dictate his strategies, policies, and campaign, while simultaneously not going on independent media that would still get the views to get these people informed who have been living in their caves. I don't see his campaign as anything but a monumental screw up. And I don't care that people say he got more votes than the Conservatives last time. Yeah, because there's 6 million more people in Canada. It's pure math. Oh, he got more seats. I'm not even sure. I'm not. I know they picked up some seats, but you're just illustrating another point that he allowed the media to dictate his policy while simultaneously ignoring alternative media. Like what's anyone's excuse for why he didn't do Gad Sad? Set aside the American ones, which I still think is bullshit. What's the excuse?
Yeah, I don't know why he didn't do Gad Sad. That's a really good point. I think that would be a great discussion. I think yours would be great as well. Like,
I could appreciate that. There are too many tweets that I've had that people say, "How the hell you go on this guy's channel?" That I could appreciate, but Gad's kind of an academic.
Yeah, well, and see, I feel like in a way, I think I'm honestly blacklisted in a way myself. I think there's a reason why they haven't talked to me. I know that they all know who I am. I mean, just quick facts. I mean, Globe and Mail did this whole article on, social media influencers, and TikTok viral videos. They said number one is CBC, number two is CTV, and I'm number three. But what they don't know is my numbers are actually more than CTV and CBC combined. And so the reach that I have was actually quite substantial. But because I have made very strong statements against immigration, I've made some very strong statements. I could not get any sort of interview with them. And I think, purposely that there's this potential that, I could be looked at as damaged goods, like, and that could hurt his campaign. And I think there was, pardon the pun, a more conservative approach to certain media outlets, which they did and did not take. And I think, part of that involved not touching anything in the U.S. Because when Chrystia Freeland went to I can't remember what daily show, one of those shows in the U.S. Mark Carney announced his leadership in one of the TV shows in the U.S. as well. It was looked at very negatively, and I think if Pierre Poilievre went on Joe Rogan, it would be like, see, this guy is just like Donald Trump. You should not vote for him, and it would have been weaponized against him. And I really do feel like there's this really strong negative sentiment against anything America. And that's just the reality of how Canada is. Like, I went on vacation to Florida, dude. I got ripped a new one for taking a vacation with my own after-tax dollars. Like, you're not going to tell me where I'm going to go. Like, what? Because there's tariffs, I shouldn't be able to go anywhere on vacation with my kids? Makes no sense.
I was telling my kid, like, we get free. We ordered a freedom juice, and he's like, "What's freedom juice?" It's freshly squeezed orange juice. Like, I'm going to go and drink Florida orange juice. No, it's nuts because they've gotten Canadians to to have nothing and be happy, or you will own nothing and be happy. They get them to do it voluntarily. Like, don't go to the US, stay here, don't get sun, don't drink orange juice. My goodness. But the problem is, I think we all agree, Canadians are among the most propagandized people on earth. You can think of North Korea as more. And I don't think Russians are more propagandized than Canadians. I think they actually know how to navigate media. Maybe Australians, and we're seeing the fruits of those government investment labors. But I would have run not a fuck you Trump campaign. A Trump is not the enemy, and if you think you're wake up, it would have been a cold splash of water to the face for Canada, and I think that's what Canadians wanted. The ones who are coming out of their cave are going to vote, that way no matter what, but you still risk waking them up with a little bit of brash cold water, which Pierre was warm milk and sour milk at that.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because I've actually heard from a woman who grew up in China, and she's like, I'm so embarrassed of how easily Canadians fall for mainstream media BS. And she said, even us in China, we know not to believe mainstream media. Like we already know that's ingrained in their culture. This is coming directly from this person who grew up in China, and she's just like, I have no idea how Canadians fall for this. Like, I can't believe it's gotten to that point where they just believe everything they see. And unfortunately, we have gotten to that point. And I think, part of what I feel like I am starting to make some headway on is educating people of why I have this disdain and this distrust and disgust for mainstream media. And I gave a perfect example for the Globe and Mail article that was written. They asked me, Mario, what's your most recent top viral video? And I said, it's this one. And I gave them one where I made a simple video and I said, this is where Mike Myers endorsed Mark Carney. And I made a quick video and I said, so let me get this straight. The guy that lives in a $20 million condo in New York City flew up to endorse the guy that hasn't lived here in 10 years. That on Instagram got over, let's say, 1 million views. I think 1.1 million, whatever the number is. They took something else completely irrelevant that would say, and my video, the video that I made was a joke, and anyone who follows me knows it's a joke. But if you read it in the Globe and Mail, you'd think this guy's a piece of shit. And literally, my video was, I'm not the type of person that will tell you, who to vote for. But if you vote for the Liberals, you're an idiot. And that didn't even get many views. So why would they use that? And I gave a very long quote, and my quote to them was, they're like, where do you see yourself in this political, perspective? Like, where are you in the spectrum? And I literally said, I truly believe mainstream media, including you at the Globe and Mail, are so far left-leaning that it borderlines propaganda for the Liberal Party. I'm the yin to your yang. I'm like, I make no money off of it. I am right-leaning, and I focus on facts. You think they publish that? Not at all. And this is part of why and I've had, CBC reached out to me. They wanted to interview me. I just said, I don't care to talk to CBC. I don't care to talk to mainstream media. Like, I literally don't need you, and I don't need you to use me for your clicks or to get more viewership so you can run your propaganda against me. And so this is, to me, like, perfect example is I can say, hey guys, look, the sky's blue. And then they'll say, can you believe he said the sky's blue? It's actually orange. It's sunset. This guy's lying to you. And this is the type of propaganda that I believe mainstream media does, is They will take half-truths and they will weaponize it against you in order to put forward whatever their political position is. And that is part of why I'm just kind of disgusted by it.
Well, and that is true. And that is why I can't rail enough against Pierre for caving to that pressure from those propagandists. And what the fake news will do is pretend not to get a joke and pretend that it was a serious comment when you made it, unless you make it so obviously sarcastic that it's no longer funny. And by the way, just so everybody knows, go check out Mario Zlaya at Mario for the North, and make sure that you hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this while you're here. I was also, Mary, I was looking because the amount of times I said, if you vote for the Liberals, you're an idiot. It's go put it in. It was endless. I use "you're an idiot" quite often, but if you vote for the Liberals, you were an idiot, and you did. And to the victor go the spoils of your stupidity. The question is this. Well, actually, no. On the topic of making jokes that people take seriously, after the election, you came down hard on Patrick Bet-David and Chris Pavlovsky. Now, I do say, like, look, you can talk away on Twitter that if you said it in real life, like, oh, fuck off, nobody would think twice about it. It's just like, oh, you could tell by the intonation of the voice, it's not a serious fuck off. It's not like, fuck off. And I read your tweets in a bit like that. Oh, shut your mouths, guys. But I got to bring it because they're kind of hilarious. Mario Zelaya. It was in response to Patrick Bet David. I don't know if I'm going to see the response. Oh, for goodness sake, I got to bring it up in non-incognito. You came.
And I can speak to it while you bring it up if
Yeah.
if that's helpful. Yeah, and so I think that there was one key line I left out, and I in my response to Patrick David Beth, and I said basically, and I basically said, look, like I said, I ultimately said, look, David, like you don't know what you're talking about. Podcasts do nothing, and the line that I left out is podcasts do nothing when you're going up against Donald Trump and you're going against the terrorists, because that changed the whole perspective on things. And and I will use Max as a perfect example. Like I think they got 780,000 or 800,000 votes, or I could be wrong, maybe more than that in 2021. And in this election, they got 130,000. And he went on Tucker. He went on Tucker. He went on whatever ones, and it had a negative effect. And part of me thinks if Pierre Poilievre went on Tucker Carlson, he went on Joe Rogan, I don't know. I think the Liberals might even have a majority. That is kind of the derangement of what's happening right now in Canada, in everything being anti-America. I went into I go into the grocery stores. There's nothing but Canadian flags, made in Canada. People are gravitating towards that. People are
Yeah,
gravitating towards
but
that, and yeah,
that might be part and parcel of the ecosystem that Pierre Poilievre was too cowardly to shake up. First, I got to read the tweet because it's hilarious when you read
sure,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Patrick Bet David put out this, and his tweet was fire. Canada, I certainly hope your candidate Pierre Poilievre did everything in his power to win for you. I hope you held him accountable. I hope you drove him to earn his victory instead to be entitled to one. I hope he and his team reached out to Tucker, Nelk, Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Megyn Kelly, Sean Ryan, Bill Maher, Lex Friedman. I think Patrick disclosed that there were a number of these that Pierre had access to and declined. I certainly hope your fear of the liberal media in Canada didn't bully you from campaigning the old-fashioned way. I hope. Yeah, we can go on. To which you replied, "Shut your mouth. Podcasts do nothing. You know absolutely nothing about politics." Max Bernier from the PPC went on Tucker, lost by 50%. Donald Trump is what destroyed the lead. It's because almost all Canadians can't stand him for the 51st state comments he made, and people relate conservatives with Republicans. First of all, so I read the "shut your mouth." I didn't read it quite as seriously as maybe it was intended or as others read it.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think you have seriously flawed reasoning is comparing what a candidate who never had a snowball's chance in hell of becoming prime minister did and lost, obviously, to what the one who was in the lead ought to have done. It's sort of like saying almost like, well, the NDP and the Green Party never had a chance of winning, so they should have just not campaigned. There was no point spending the money. The other thing is, part of what you say might be right in that Donald Trump is what destroyed his lead. My retort to that is always going to be, it wasn't Donald Trump who destroyed his lead. It was his response to what Donald Trump did that destroyed his lead. There was a way to turn that 51st state comment from an attack on the sovereignty of the nation into a flattering sort of like guy trying to pick up a chick at a bar and saying, hey, you look mighty pretty. Like, that's what Pierre could have done. Hey, Trump, I'm sure you'd love to have Canada as a 51st state, and we're flattered for the offer. And then you go, like, there were so many other ways to deal with this better, I think, than to play into what he perceived as the TDS that he needed to gain. And he could have riled up Canadians to the point where, like, you don't need to be offended by the come on, you can be flattered by it. And nothing's going to change my mind about that. What the cope that drives me nuts is now when conservatives it's going to be a majority conservative. We're going to win all the ridings. The liberals are going to be decimated. They're not even going to exist anymore. Oh, well, it's a good thing he did what he did. Otherwise, we'd be dealing with a liberal majority. That's loser thought political cope.
I'm going to say I disagree with it, and I'll give you just a quick example of something that I've seen. So when Donald Trump first made his comments about the 51st state and Governor Trudeau, we thought it was hilarious. Everyone thought it was hilarious. It's like, this guy doesn't respect Trudeau. Trudeau's a douchebag. We all agreed with it. And I made a video, and I read Donald Trump's tweet, and he said something like, you'll pay half taxes if you join the 51st state. And I said, that sounds pretty good. And I smiled. That was it. And it went on Fox News. It went semi-viral. I got ripped to shreds, even from conservatives, for saying that. And it was a joke. Like, I'm literally joking. The one thing that I did say is what sounded pretty good was the half taxes. Who's going to say no? Give me one person who doesn't want to pay half the taxes that they're paying. It doesn't exist. So I was like, man, this sounds pretty good. Fox News ran it. Oh my goodness. It was like shit hit the fan. It's like I became Canada's #1 trader. And anyone who followed me for long enough knew that the comment was playful. Like they know my personality, they know where I stand on things. But those who didn't, it was literally a witch hunt.
But
And
I have had similar experiences with so-called, I should say, Canadian so-called conservatives.
Mhm.
They need a slap. They don't need to be coddled. And what I think is happening is they're being coddled by the groupthink of the Canadian so-called conservative movement to say, yeah, we're going to rationalize our own political cowardice, and we're going to rationalize the fact that we kind of react. They reacted a lot like DeSantis and his crowd online when they were running against Trump. And they rationalized it to themselves. Even after the loss, they rationalized it to themselves. So I think they need a political slapping, not a political coddling. But what I see them getting from their party and from their brethren is a political coddling. I don't even know what the question is in there. I'm venting because what you say, I mean, it's sort of similar. Like I take flack from the conservatives for being right and telling it like it is, at least on this. I'm wrong on other stuff. But instead of them saying, yeah, you might have been right, Viva, it's like, no, not only were you right, but fuck you for being right. You live in Florida, piss off and shut up.
Well, here's the thing. I would say that I really do believe, and I know you're a believer that he was losing, and he should have just gone with a Hail Mary and basically gone on these podcasts. I disagree. I know the conservatives themselves, me myself, no one trusted the polls because there's such a wide variance. And I always said this from the beginning, and I said these polls make no sense. You have bias. You have someone that used to be a Liberal campaign manager that owns one company. You have another gentleman that made very nefarious tweets against Pierre Poilievre saying, I'm going to make it basically like my life's work or whatever the heck he said to make sure that he doesn't get into office. These are the people that are pushing the polls. They had a 15% margin for the Liberals winning over the Conservatives. And I knew, like, the conservative movement, how it is in Canada, at most, maybe you'll lose 1-2%. Like I always said that there's a small variance. There's no way you're going from 43, 44 to like 30, and then the Liberals are winning ahead. And so we all truly did believe that. And it ended up being true. It ended up being true. Not in 100 years, almost 100 years, have two parties gotten over 40% of the popular vote. And so, and I'm not going to tout it as like, this is a huge victory. I'm just saying is that we had so much of an uphill battle, and I'm saying I'm using the global we for the conservatives, that I really do believe that if he tried taking that Hail Mary approach, went on Tucker, went on Joe Rogan, went on all these podcasts, the only one that probably wouldn't have hurt him, I think, would have been the Nelk Boys, because they're Canadians and people know that. And they could have started off with that opening. But, did we get a great deal amount of young conservatives coming out? Yes. What and not to, obviously the Nelk Boys are on a different level in terms of their podcast, but in terms of views, specifically talking about the conservative movement, how bad the Liberal Party is for Canada, I think I would probably say that I have more views than they do. During a 6-month period, I have to be at maybe 400 or 500 million views, speaking only on these topics objectively and not monetizing it. And that's the consistent feedback that I've heard from not only like the older generation, because I do have people plus 55 that are on TikTok, but I also have a lot of younger audiences who follow me too. And I think part of it helped create that younger movement to come out and vote.
Well, this was the other problem, that the argument I was having. The polls are rubbish, by and large, always, unless they're radically against the narrative. And even in that case, you could have these false flag type polls to make people get mobilized. Markets, as I was saying at the time, were harder to manipulate. And sure, it could have taken $1 million or $2 million Chinese dollars, and you have the market data to drive the propaganda media narrative. But at some point, it's harder to manipulate the markets than the polls, and conservatives were not listening to that. And it wasn't a Hail Mary. I mean, the other thing, by the way, the reason why the PPC got their asses handed to them is because it was the snap election, 32 days to their. It's a fault. It's a problem that they couldn't mobilize faster. They couldn't even fill a slate. But Pierre Poilievre had almost sort of, what's it called when you, not a layup, but he had laid the groundwork for this sort of a loss only by not anticipating anybody other than Freeland or Karina Gould. I mean, I think everybody was thinking it would be Freeland was the surefire thing. So I think he sort of got very comfortable with the fact that he was going to become the prime minister 3 months before the election was called. And then when they swapped out the two idiots, Karina Gould and Chrystia Freeland, for the guy who, at the very least, if nothing else, he looks prime ministerial. He's a good-looking, healthy-looking elderly gentleman, white hair. He's the type of guy, from stereotypes you want as a CEO of a company. They swapped him in, and then Pierre was just operating still on that, riding the thought that he was going to just, sweep in and become prime minister, and didn't campaign the way he otherwise would have. I guess the issue is it wasn't even a Hail Mary. He didn't campaign the way he needed to from day one because he was riding the I'm going to run against Freeland and not Carney train, and just presuming that he was going to become prime minister.
Well, I want to share some insights with you. I went into a member of parliament meeting, a conservative parliament meeting. There's a member of parliament that was part of Poilievre's team that was there, and this is before Mark Carney announced his leadership bid. You can actually check the timestamps. They literally said, "We know he's probably going to announce. We know he's probably going to win." Before Mark Carney announced, they were already attacking the Carney policies. And so when Carney was named as the chief economic advisor for the Liberal Party, they already started doing that. And so I would say that they actually started campaigning against Carney well in advance before the leadership bid, even before he won it and ultimately became Trudeau's replacement. So they did start early on. I gotta hand it to them. I don't know how I didn't see it. They did. They actually did, and they knew it. And you could look at old kind of tweets and timestamps when they did that. But you should check it out. But I was there when they told me, and I was like, "Holy shit! Like Carney's actually going to do it." I'll tell you a crazy story. My brother is the head of the practice at Ernst & Young for the economics division. Really smart guy, has his undergrad, master's, PhD in economics. And he said, "You know what?" He's like, "Have you heard of a guy named Mark Carney?" And I was like, "No." I'm like, "Who the heck is that?" This was over a year ago. And he's like, "We just had a lunch." And he gave the most bizarre speech. He's like, "I think this guy's trying to be the prime minister of Canada." I was like, "Seriously?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, there's certain signals and certain things that he said. And he's like, it was really weird. He's like, "Check it out." That, I think later on that day, 1 or 2 days after, it shows that it shows that Mark Carney gave this speech. And that's when I looked him up. I had no idea who he was. And my brother's like, he's got a killer resume. He's like, Goldman Sachs. He's like, he's a smart guy. He's like, you should check him out. And I said, holy crap, I never forgot that name. And then Trudeau announced that, you have this new economic advisor. And so I think it was at that moment in time that I think the Conservatives really had concerns over him. And it really started happening. And so those pieces, I was actually more shocked that my brother, who's not involved in politics at all, he could care less. He doesn't really fall in one political spectrum or another. But he called it. He literally called it a year ago.
Well, I mean, that even makes it more inexcusable that the word was complacency. So thank you, whoever refreshed my memory. He had gotten complacent because it was like his interview with Jordan Peterson was like talking about what he's going to be doing in his third year of his prime ministership, as though it's just a slam dunk. It makes it even more inexcusable. I think it's I am of the opinion that he should have gone not full Canadian MAGA, because that's what made him popular. I think what sealed the deal was when I saw that he was forcing Conservatives to take off their maple MAGA hats to attend rallies, and then I took flack for that. Oh, it's not happening. If it's happening, it's a liberal fake plan to try to spread disinformation. It was real. And when you see it, like the hearts of Conservatives getting broken, I think he should have embraced CAGA, or a CAGA can make, or no, it'd be MACA, not MAGA. It would be MACAGA. You know what I mean? He should have embraced MAGA spirit in Canada. He could have done something differently, but the question now is, Mario, I mean, you're in the thick of it. You're not going anywhere, I don't think. Do you think Canada survives 4 years of, back it up, do you think the Liberals are going to make a deal with the NDP, coalition, support government, or you're going to have people crossing the, it's called crossing the aisle or crossing the,
I think it is.
yeah, crossing the aisle to become Liberals? I mean, is NDP, at least two or three of them, going to swap, switch, coalesce with the Liberals to give them a majority?
I think so. I think
Okay.
so. I think Mark Carney came out and said, "Oh no," because right now Canadians hate the word coalition. We have been brutalized over it. We've wanted nothing more than to have an election. And, just like how, and your point of Maple MAGA, that was on my bio for about a year. Like people are like weaponizing that today. And I've always said this, and I said, I probably support 95% of Donald Trump's policies. I don't support the tariffs.
Well,
Obviously, they're awful.
Carney came out today and basically said he's not only does he support them, he's a transformational president who's protecting America.
Yes, yeah, and that's right. And the thing is like that's just the mindset of where a lot of Canadians are. You call yourself a Maple MAGA? How dare you? Like the Liberals are burning Liberals' Teslas, right? Like that's how we've gotten to. Like the Liberals were the one. Like you got to buy a green vehicle. You got to do this. Oh, I'm not buying the green vehicle. Oh, you're a Liberal too, and you got a Tesla. I'm going to set it on fire. I'm going to key it. And it's just this. It's almost like hysteria. That's the word for it. It's this mass hysteria
It's
against.
mass formation psychosis at a national
Yes,
political level, and
yes.
I think they needed to be woken up from that and not coddled in it. But that's so you think that there's going to be something of a, it won't be coalition, it could be informal support, or I think the NDP the NDP is no longer recognized as an official party, right? They're under the 15 seats.
Yeah, correct. They lost the, I think it's just called party status.
So
But
what interest do they even have in clinging onto their NDP title? Three or four of them. Nothing.
I mean that no, that's a good point. And like, and just to give you a quick story and update. Like the Liberal Party under Kathleen Wynne, this was almost a decade ago, destroyed the Ontario economy so badly that that taste is still so sour in the people of Ontario's minds that I don't know if there'll ever be a Liberal premier in the next like decade. Like even though people don't like Doug Ford and they think he's a traitor for not endorsing Pierre Poilievre, and you look at anything Doug Ford tweets out, it's all negative comments against him.
Yep.
Nobody likes Doug Ford, but I truly think that the Conservatives will always win. I think that's going to happen with the NDP. I think Jagmeet destroyed the NDP party for at minimum a decade. And that's obviously going to be a problem because they used to take the votes from the Liberals, right? And if I think Bloc maybe in the next election will probably regain quite a bit of seats, seeing that the Liberals aren't going to do what they said they're going to do and stand up to Donald Trump. I think NDP is going to have a very hard uphill battle. So I think the next election is still going to be relatively close. I don't know today. I don't know if we still get a majority if the Conservative wins.
The amazing thing now is that you got Carney coming out and talking about actually capping immigration. He said he would cap it at less than 5%. It was temporary. I think it was temporary residents at less than 5% of the population of Canada by 2027. That's still a massive number, though. Does, not to get too cynical, does Canada survive another 4 years in any shape that we recognize?
No, it doesn't, because right now, like and people say, healthcare is a provincial issue. Like it's got nothing to do with the federal, but it is when the immigration's coming in and there's not enough infrastructure being built to keep up with the uncontrolled immigration that's coming into the country. So I think since 2018, 70,000 or 74,000 Canadians have died waiting for surgery or even just imaging. They're literally just waiting. And I think the average wait time, the Fraser Institute did an amazing study
Like
that talked
18
about what
months
the
or something.
average, yeah, like to get MRI and imaging, it's ridiculous. Like where we fall in like some of these OECD countries, it is just basically dead last across the board. I think people in Nova Scotia have it the absolute worst. Ontario's somewhere in the middle. I mean, I just even from a healthcare perspective, I just don't think we survive. And I think it's this, people think that, the Century Initiative is some sort of a conspiracy theory, but they don't. This is real. They used to have MPs of the Liberal Party that sat in it. Mark Carney's advisor I think his name's Mark Wiseman. He's one of the founders of the Century Initiative. And for those who don't know what that is, that calls for Canada's population to reach 100 million by 2100. The math of that from today, I believe I did it, I think it's 780,000 immigrants every single year for the next, 75 years to be able to reach that number. It's insane.
Yeah, I talked about that a while back. I think anybody who's been around the channel for a year knows it was just an informal non-government program that they wanted to double. Now the thing is, it would go up on a scale, right? Like they wouldn't start at 780,000. The more the population grows, the more immigrants they can take in. It'll bankrupt the country. The question is this: Alberta talking secession, and one of my predictions was that if the Liberals got a majority, you'll see Alberta secede or move to secede. And if Carney doesn't allow Alberta to fully exploit its natural resources, they will. And Quebec will secede as well. They'll go for a third time. And what you'll have is the breaking up or balkanization of Canada. And whether or not Alberta becomes a 51st state, they're just going to say, we want out of this oppressive, abusive relationship. And I think they'll get it unless the courts stop them. On the ground in Canada, what do you feel about the secession movement of Alberta?
It's going to happen. That referendum, the question is going to be posed in April. I'm certain of it. I think, Danielle Smith, did you see the statement that she made yesterday? I don't know if you got a chance to see it.
Yesterday, I don't think so. What was it yesterday?
It was an incredible masterclass of diplomacy, leadership, and her basically saying, we're not effing around anymore. And she basically said, look, my party, in my view, I don't want to separate from Canada and we're not going to oppose it. But if the citizens want it, I'm going to do the democratic thing and we're going to pose the question next year in April 2026. She made demands. She said, you know what? The equalization payments, we haven't seen the results. We've been subsidizing all of Canada. She ripped the whole equalization payments. She's like, what are we doing subsidizing Ontario? What are we doing subsidizing Quebec? These are massive economies. The whole concept of equalization was to help smaller provinces like PEI, Nova Scotia,
Mm-hmm.
and she gave a beautiful breakdown. You should watch it. It's probably 15 minutes long. It was unbelievable. And she basically told Carney, like, how ultimately, like, how dare you guys leave oil in the ground? You need it. You come strip us. You handcuff us with the resources that we have. We can be, I think she said, as a standalone entity, Alberta could be the wealthiest nation in the world. Like that, and I truly do believe that is the Saudi Arabia of the North.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so much oil, there's so much wealth, and we are capping it. We have this, bill, I think it's C-69 with the No Pipelines Act. It is absolutely devastating, not just to Canada, but to Alberta. And so her whole thing is like, we're done being pushed around. And it was so eloquently put. I don't know if there's anything you could dissect that she said that is wrong. So I would honestly suggest that everyone watch it. It was beautiful.
I'll pull up a clip after you're here, and I'll play that for the crowd. Yeah, but this is another. I'm just going to keep railing against Pierre and the Conservatives, where Pierre had a good point that he didn't make nearly enough during the election about how if Canada produced energy unrestricted and ethically the way it does, it would reduce global emissions by causing countries like India to not produce in dirty ways. But Mark Carney, another thing that he didn't harp at all, the WEF globalist whore that he is, has invested in these dirty countries, these dirty energy countries. And so he was, he had a vested interest to cripple Canadian economy for the climate crisis while investing in Brazil and the United Arab Emirates. Mario, you're a reasonable person. I knew you were reasonable. I felt it was a bit of a meltdown and you were a bit frustrated. But what do you do now that the election is over and you've got to live with this?
Well, honestly, I'm just going to continue what I'm doing. I would say that the big move that I made this time around, and a regret that I have, is not opening up a Facebook account and not growing that, because there's a lot of the older demographics that is glued to CTV, CBC, but they also use Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And Facebook, people forget Facebook's penetration is massive, even though I haven't used it like personally and maybe a couple of years. I don't know many people in the younger generation that uses it all, but my parents do. And, the boomers, and I mean, no disrespect when I say that, but the older, boomer generation, they do. And so I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing, and just basically breaking down the news as it happens, giving people an insight to what has happened, why we've gotten to the way we are. Because I think the key of it is to make it very insightful. Like I don't know a single person who just other than people maybe in their late 60s. At best, CBC will probably get 150,000 viewers just alone on a tweet that you make. You'll get more viewership than they do, and I think this is where independent information is headed. I think we just need to reach the right audience. And to me, the right audience of what we need to educate is the ones that operated based off a lot of propaganda and rumors. And I think Facebook is a good channel to hopefully penetrate that. So I'm going to continue what I'm doing because, I've heard, a lot of positive things and a lot of negative things. I mean, yeah, and you got to know this too. And I'm sure you face it all the time. When you make a stance on something, you get hated. I mean, I used to, when I was posting about immigration and how bad we have, I'd be getting almost daily death threats. And that's how it is, right? Like, how dare you? You're racist. I'm going to kill you. If I see you, blah 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 blah. It's always the same crap. But I'm just going to keep doing exactly what I'm doing because a lot of the conversations that used to be private, where people would be like, you know what, like, what happened to Canada? Like, well, and honestly, frankly speaking, the question I would always get in the comments, why are there so many Indians in Canada, right?
I landed in Toronto. It was like Bangladesh in the airport, and I say it's if I want. There's nothing wrong with it. Bangladesh is a beautiful place. Every country has their people. It was just like entering a foreign country, and people that's racist. Viva, Canada. The Europeans before them were the natives. Whatever it was and whatever it is, there's a change going on in real time. And whether or not you think it's good or bad, you can't say that it's not happening. And to say
Yes.
that someone's racist for saying that it's happening without judgment, I happen to think it's a bad thing, not because of where they're coming from, just because of the fact that too many are coming for the system. Set aside the fact that it's not normal to import people who don't speak either of the two languages of the country and seem to be reluctant to learn it. But yeah, you get, well, I've been realizing you get hate for saying that there's no good excuse to use the N-word. That one is the one that's pissing me off these days. I don't know if you might not be down with this story in the States, but the woman who raised $600,000 after referring to a
Oh,
child
yeah.
as the N-word. I'm like, someone's like, I say, there's never a good excuse to use that word. And and yeah.
Yeah.
Are you planning on sticking around? Have you thought about defecting to the US?
Honestly, it's not something I'd consider. The only way I would consider going to the US would be on a temporary basis. I have a 11-year-old son who I train almost daily basis for basketball, and he's extremely good for his age, and he's got dreams, and I want to help him achieve those dreams, and he really wants to one day go to a D1 school, and so the only way I would move would be for him, and just to be there for support. But Canada will always be my home. And I think over a decade ago we looked at it moving to Florida. It is more for weather, but we have so much family here. We are happy here despite the negative things that have happened over the last decade. I just can't see ourselves moving.
Well, Mario, I'm going to keep going live after this. So where can people find you? And I'll put the links in the pinned comment. It's Mario for the number the North, Mario for the North on Twitter, TikTok. I'm not sure how many of my followers are on TikTok, but in case they are,
I, I would say Mario for the North on Facebook, Instagram, and X, and then TikTok. It's kind of got its own thing going right now.
Mario for the North. I'll put it in the chat. And
Appreciate it.
Mario, I'm glad. I don't take very much personally on Twitter, and I hope other people don't, but I know some people do. I've reached out to Rachel Gilmore, happy to have her on, even though she pretended not to get my joke about Carney speaking in satanic tongues when he was trying to speak French. But doesn't matter. Thank you for coming on, Mario. It was great to meet you. And if you're down in Florida, I love axe throwing. I love any game that is repetitive motion, like bowling, darts, golf.
Yes.
So if you're down here, let me know. And if I make it back up to the Great White North,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, honestly, thanks a lot for having me on. And I got to say too, like the same thing. I don't take things personally. I mean, people can say whatever they want online. It's not going to affect me whatsoever. And I think it's healthy for us to have disagreements. And like you and I could disagree on everything, but I think it makes it more entertaining. So then I understand your perspective and you understand mine. And I truly do believe that we need to move towards a society where you can have respectful conversations, you can have respectful disagreements, and even if it's not respectful, even if we start getting into it, where maybe we're swearing at each other, whatever, at least we're having it out, as opposed to sitting behind a computer acting all tough. Like let's have these conversations. Like let's get these things out in the open, and it doesn't matter where you sit on the political spectrum either. I think Rachel is a perfect example. She blocked me, but she only blocked me after she tried getting doxing my one of my businesses and flooding it with negative reviews. And so it's like it's just there's certain things that I can look past, and there's certain things that just show the personality of a person. And to me, the fact that you and I had connected, and we said, Mario, do you want to come online? And for you to extend the invite, I think it truly shows the type of person you are. And honestly, I respect it. I really do. I like you and I respect you.
Thank you very much, Mario. It was great, and I got some clips of Mark Carney that I still got to play. So, and the one of Danielle Smith. So we'll keep in touch, Mario. It's great talking to you.
For sure. Okay, thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
See ya.